Good evening, everybody. The Democratic Party has a police problem, and it is a big political problem for the Democrats. The radical Dems' calls to defund law enforcement are radical and beyond even the far left's embrace. And the far left now poses a very real threat to the Democratic Party and every American. After more than 2 weeks of demonstrations and often violent rioting by left-wing demonstrators and protesters, even left-wing national media and Democratic leaders seemed in stunned acquiescence to calls to move even farther left, but that is exactly what they want their leaders to do. And self-righteous protesters and agitators pushing the left agenda, and at the top of that agenda, defunding police departments. President Trump making it clear he will not permit lawlessness in this country and is now reminding everyone as we approach Election Day that he is the law and order president. Within the past hour, President Trump had a roundtable discussion with African American leaders. The White House also saying the administration is nearing final edits on a number of police reform proposals. As debate over reforms rage in Washington, we are witnessing firsthand what the radical left's police-free utopia looks like. In Seattle, we're watching in real time a city descending into anarchy. During the early hours of the morning, thousands of leftist protesters, led by Black Lives Matter and Antifa and anarchist groups, broke into City Hall and took over. The mob, just a few days ago, this very same mob, seized a 6-block zone in the downtown area that includes a shuttered police precinct, which has been abandoned by law enforcement in the face of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and friends. That's right, parts of one of this country's largest, most innovative, most left-leaning cities now under mob control. The left-wing activists are demanding the city's Democratic mayor, Jenny Durkan, resign. But they say she might be able to keep her job if she will just do what she's told, which is to defund the police. Leading the overnight charge into City Hall was Councilwoman Kshama Sawant. She's a member of the Socialist Alternative Party. And recently, she talked at a campaign event in Tacoma for failed socialist presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Once in City Hall last night, Sawant got in the mood of the thing. She talked to her adoring mob and had this to say about her fellow Seattle City councilman.
This is such a moving occasion. For all the difficult moments I have, having to be around corporate politicians, bureaucrats, all kinds of sellouts. This is what it's all about.
Quite a rhetorical device, that, waiting for the boos. We're also witnessing, of course, a clear statement of what happens when police are no longer there to protect the rest of us from the mob. During the riots that stem from the protests over the death of George Floyd in Los Angeles, far from the actual incident, the LA Police Department reporting homicides there rose by 250%. The number of shooting victims rose by 56%. In New York, shootings surged, murders more than doubled from the same period a year ago. All of this as protesters were flooding the streets, along with rioters and looters, and shattered windows and destroyed property in their wake. Numbers like these should be enough to end even the remote possibility of any city defunding or dismantling police departments. And as we've reported here, some of the radical Democratic leaders now seemingly understand that to remove a police department would be disastrous for a city, even more disastrous for the Democratic Party and their efforts to ever take power again. Perhaps they now realize the disastrous policy that led to the demonstrations and the riots, to the protests, and yes, the arson, the vandalism, the looting, and that all of that could bring the end of their quest for political rule soon. And as always, there is money, of course. Numbers show that police and law enforcement associations, who the radical left want to dismiss, are among the largest donors to Democrats since 1994. I'll bet you're surprised at that. Those police groups donating lots of money to the senators and congressmen who want to get rid of them, especially to Senators Amy Klobuchar and Patrick Leahy. Klobuchar, of course, was the attorney of Hennepin County, Minnesota, a favorite daughter, if you will, of the state, who chose to pass cases of police brutality to grand juries rather than bring charges herself. The top two beneficiaries of police money in the House are Democrats Bill Pascrell and House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. How about that? Who knew that Democrats would be the beneficiaries of law enforcement associations and lobbying groups? Some of the Democratic Party's most radical elements, however, like freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, are far more outspoken in their push to rid this country altogether of police and law enforcement. AOC seems to be even a little too radical for George Stephanopoulos. Their exchange this morning.
Well, why is it necessary to take the money from the police? I mean, I understand your argument, the argument you're making about expanding social services, investing in social services, but the research does show that more police on the street means less crime.
Well, I think there's one question that is interesting here is that when it comes to funds, it's not always just about the number of officers in the street. It's about these police precincts that have tanks, that have military weaponry, and frankly have a degree of material resources and warlike weaponry that people ask, why does a local police precinct have this in the first place?
AOC having a little trouble getting to her notes, apparently, there. It's the only thing I could figure out that she would be doing. Politicians like AOC proposing cuts to police departments, they should have to answer, don't you think, for the cost of their proposals? They've incited more violence in American cities that have taken people's lives, ruined businesses, and changed communities, perhaps forever. Their wholesale attack on police is one that the American people simply will not accept. As Congressman Jim Jordan put it today, the scariest part about all of this is those on the left who are willing to stay silent and just let it all happen.
It is pure insanity to defund the police. And the fact that my Democrat colleagues won't speak out against this crazy policy is just that frightening.
Well, this evening, we'll be taking up the very issue of the left's push to the left, including their efforts to defund police and much more. Our exclusive interview with the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, coming up here shortly.